remarks in the presence of so many esteemed business leaders from both Korea and Egypt. As we are well aware, one of the world's four great ancient civilizations began here in Egypt, a magnificent country known for its incredible monuments, such as the Great Pyramids, the Sphinx, and the Luxor Temple. In addition to this rich historical legacy, I believe Egypt has immense growth potential and a bright future ahead of it. On top of its abundant labor supply and natural resources, Egypt has a land mass over 5 times the size of the Korean peninsula and the largest population among all the countries in the Middle East and North Africa. It also serves as a key gateway for entry into the EU, Arab, and African markets, as well as a transportation and logistics hub that connects the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean through the Suez Canal. Based on these strong foundations, Egypt maintained growth rates of over 4% from 2004 to 2010, despite the global economic recession. Against this backdrop, bilateral trade between two countries has steadily increased since the establishment of diplomatic relations in 1995, reaching $3.1 billion in 2010, largely due to an active exchange of automobiles and raw materials. Moreover, numerous foreign companies, including Samsung Electronics, which will receive the CSR award today, LG Electronics, Midas, and Dongil, have been investing in Egypt, thereby contributing to the employment of several thousand staff members and ultimately to economic growth in both countries. Meanwhile, in the aftermath of a recent political turmoil, Egypt's economic growth and trade with Korea have briefly faltered. However, as in the Middle Eastern proverb that says, a land that has only sunny days will turn into a desert. Egypt has newly emerged from its political transition with confidence and strength under the new government led by President El-Sisi. I have no doubt Egypt will once again demonstrate its strength and continue to expand ties with Korea. After the end of the Korean War that began in 1950, Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world. But Korea's outstanding labor force and R&D investment helped facilitate economic growth afterwards, with the result that today it is the world's 9th largest trading power and ranked the 14th in terms of global GDP. I hope that Korea's successful experience in economic development can be shared with Egypt through enhancing bilateral economic cooperation. Korea has now world-class technology and a highly trained workforce across diverse manufacturing industries such as petrochemical, steel, IT, and shipbuilding. And currently, Korea has shown the world outstanding performance in the automobiles, nuclear power generation, and healthcare services. On the other hand, Egypt holds its greatest potential as a resource-rich market that bridges Egypt, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. If we effectively utilize our complementary economic structures, Korea and Egypt will be able to expand mutual interest in the coming years. In particular, As an increasing number of Korean firms seeks to enhance local employment and technology transfer, Korean government spares no effort in materializing this willingness so that they can bring great benefits to the Egyptian economy. In this regard, KOTRA and ECS will sign an MOU to promote trade and investment. And one-on-one business meetings will be held this afternoon for businesses representing construction, petrochemical, and trade sectors. We must capitalize on these opportunities and broaden the scope of our bilateral cooperation to include more industries such as nuclear power generation, renewable energy, medicine, and medium and small-sized enterprise development. There is a famous proverb that says, if we want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. If we pool our strengths together and work as a team toward a common goal.
Korea, a country we admire in Egypt. We admire your country because it is one of the fastest growing economies in the world, despite the fact that your country does not enjoy the benefits of being rich in natural resources, despite the fact that your country suffers from overpopulation in a relatively small territory. We admire you because you have succeeded to increase in 30 years between 1980 and 2010, in 30 years, you've increased your per capita GDP 13 times, and you've multiplied your GDP by 17, coming from 88 billion US dollars to $1,500 billion in 30 years. It's really impressive. We admire you because you have adopted an export-oriented economic strategy to fuel the economy and became, as of 2009, the 8th largest exporter and the 10th largest importer in the world, and ranked today, as the Vice Minister mentioned, the 14th biggest economy in the world, measured by national GDP, and the 12th measured by the purchasing power parity, PPP. So we admire you, and I believe we all have a lot to learn from you. I think the business community has to learn from you and benefit from your technological knowledge and advance, your managerial skills. And we in the government have to look very closely at the policies you've drawn that have led you to encourage Koreans to save, to invest, to innovate, to acquire new technologies, and to get you where you are right now, one of, as I said, the fastest growing economies in the world. We welcome you at this very specific juncture in Egypt's modern history. We are at a very, very important juncture as we are trying and succeeding to put Egypt on the track of political stability. After, in fact, 30 long months, turbulent and difficult months that have started back in January 2011. As I said, we are trying and succeeding. We've adopted a new constitution that responds to a very large extent to the aspiration of the vast majority of Egyptians. constitution that provides for a democratic system that abides by the rule of law, that provides for the separation of powers, and that provides also for an independent court system. We are on the right track towards political stability, as we have elected a new President of the Republic, a strong man that will be able to pull together the country, a man with vision, a man that enjoys a very large popularity, and more important, who is ready to draw on his popularity in order to take the sometimes difficult and painful decisions needed to reform the Egyptian economy. You're coming at, again, the right time and at an important juncture of the history, the modern history of our country, since we are trying to put the economy on the track of sustainable and inclusive economic development. To that effect, we have drawn a new economic policy aiming at, on the one hand, restructuring its budget in order to reduce the huge budget deficit we've been suffering from since several decades, aiming also at boosting the exports in order to reduce the current account deficit, and finally aiming at increasing our investments in order to reduce the growth deficit we've been suffering from for the last 5 or 6 years, to be very precise, since 2008. Yes, we're trying to restructure the budget in order, as I said, to reduce the budget deficit. And this requires the replacement of most of the spending on inefficient fuel subsidies with spending on major important services, namely education, health, housing, transport, and others. We, on the other hand, also trying to increase public revenues by introducing new taxation, fair taxation, that hopefully doesn't have any negative impact on incentives to produce and to make profits. Difficult decisions. In fact, the government has already taken the first steps to implement those policies by substantially reducing subsidies on oil and oil products for consumption and for production also. We're currently trying to promote exports of both goods and services, capitalizing on a large number of free trade agreements Egypt has signed with the Arab countries on the one hand, with the African countries, with the EU, within or in the context of the partnership agreement with Turkey. And in that context, I have to mention that we will be very soon starting to negotiate a new free trade agreement with the Eurasian Economic Union, comprising of Russia, Kazakhstan, and Belarus. This obviously opens for any producer out of Egypt a huge territory to cover, from the sources of the Nile to the vast plains of Siberia. We're talking about several billions of consumers that could be reached out of a production facility in Egypt. We're also trying to revive our tourism industry, an industry that has suffered since 2011 and that has been contributing for more than 10% in the Egyptian GDP. Let me give you a few figures in this regards. Egypt had received close to 15 million, to be very precise, 14.8 million tourists back in 2010. Unfortunately, this number has been divided by 2 since 2011, and we need to get back on track. As a matter of fact, we need to plan to receive more than 20 million tourists within the coming 3 to 5 years, and this requires a lot of work, but it requires, firstly and above all, stability and the restoration of law and order. Finally, we have an extremely ambitious investment program in order to close the gap of the growth deficit. We need to create jobs. We need to reduce our we need to increase the job opportunities, and in that regards I have to mention first of all the mega projects that are currently being executed. Number one, the deepening of the Suez Canal, the digging of a parallel canal that will allow a continuous flow of sailing in both in opposite directions, and that will allow the increase in the capacity of the Suez Canal on the one hand, and the reduction of the passage time on the other hand. And this is extremely important for international trade, and it will have a very positive impact on the revenues of the Suez Canal. The second mega project I need to emphasize is the project related to the development of the Suez Canal area, taking advantage of the geopolitical situation of the Suez Canal at the crossroads between 3 continents, a very strategic geographical position. This project encompasses the development of 6 ports. We're talking of Port Said, East Port Said, West Port Said, Adabeya or Suez, Ain Sokhna, Tor, and also it will involve the construction of dry docks, the development of shipping industry, the establishment of several construction and maintenance and services facilities, container terminals. In fact, the whole idea is to create of this area industrial and commercial hub at the crossroads between 3 continents. A third mega project is the one we call the Golden Triangle, which aims at the developing of an area in the southeast of Egypt, between the Nile Valley and the Red Sea shores, an area that is extremely rich in mineral resources, including gold, phosphate, quartz, silica, and many other mineral resources that needs to be developed. In fact, the execution of all those projects require, to a very large extent, that Egypt succeeds to regain the confidence of foreign investors. And to this end, the present government is reviewing laws and regulations in order to facilitate doing business in Egypt, in order to clamp down on bureaucracy and regain the confidence of financial markets and investors. As the Vice Minister mentioned, we have lately received, very happily, a large number of Korean investments in Egypt. And let me tell you that Egypt is extremely satisfied with those investments, and honestly, we're doing whatever we can in order to accommodate their needs and give them the required incentives. We have welcomed, obviously, Samsung, LG's, Dosan Hai, and several companies in the petrochemicals sector. Let me tell you that the government and the private sector have a large number of projects to offer foreign investors and to offer very specifically Korean investors. In the realm of the automotive sector, Egypt needs and wants to establish a car manufacturing industry that could enjoy the benefits of the economies of scale by taking advantage, again, of the free trade facilities we have with many countries. We want to be able to produce cars in Egypt with a large Egyptian content and to export our production to African countries, to neighboring Arab countries, and I think there are huge opportunities to cooperate with you in that regard. We need also with you to work on developing alternative energies, atomic, solar, and wind energies. As you know, we have a large deficit as far as energy is concerned as a result of the unfortunate reduction in the production of oil and oil products in Egypt. We need to develop renewables, and we count on you and your cooperation in that regard. Obviously, I think the GAFI, the General Authority for Investment, and Dr. Hassan is here. He will offer you or describe the different opportunities that are offered in the construction sector, in the shipbuilding sectors, and in the petrochemical sectors. I hope that those opportunities will interest you. I hope we'll be able to increase our economic cooperation. As I said, we admire you and we have a lot to learn from you. Thank you for being here and thank you for listening to me.
Here is His Excellency Mr. Munir Fatih Abdel. Now we will hear a congratulatory remark.